Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us, Social Engineer and Identify. We're going to be talking about the topic of social engineering and AI and what we can expect to see in the future and what we're seeing presently right now, and hopefully come up with some good tips to start defending against this attack. I'm Chris Hadnaghi. I'm the CEO and founder of Social Engineer, and with me are my co-hosts, Justin Marciano and Paul Van. Justin or Paul, maybe you guys want to tell everyone a little bit about Identify, and we can start kick that off that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for everyone for joining this morning. Really appreciate the time. Paul and I are the co-founders of Identify. What we're building is a deepfake cybersecurity, deepfake enterprise cybersecurity platform where we can proactively defend against the creation of deepfakes as well as have real-time defense via video conferencing platforms and looking to expand into other communication channels.
Excellent. Sorry, I was fixing Paul's lack of co-host, so I was distracted. Wanted to
No
make sure we
worries.
had the right co-host. And something that that Justin didn't touch on is that we just started partnering as social engineer with
Yes.
Identify, where we're going to be offering deepfake social engineering services, mainly because of what we're going to be talking about today. And they're going to be our partners in helping us produce the deepfake portion of it. So first of all, Justin or Paul, let's just start talking a little bit about like what we're seeing in the market right now as far as with AI and social engineering attacks. Let's focus on that first.
I think as what we take a look at, which is more on the visual side of things, we've seen a ton, and we're really only seeing it increase and improve. For one, we've started to see a lot of live video conferencing deepfake attacks with not just one person on the other end, but actually sometimes multiple people from your team or that look like your team, but are actually deepfakes. We've seen two successful attacks in Hong Kong now. And we are seeing this being tried all across the world. And as these models kind of continue to improve, we expect them to only have a higher success rate.
I have a cut. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we're also seeing people utilize LLMs for phishing emails and phishing messages to kind of target people in different language groups or languages and target people all across the globe with much more fluency and much more believable emails.
Okay, so for some that may not be familiar with the terminology, can you just define what is an LLM?
A large language model, so something similar to, or something like ChatGPT or what OpenAI produces. Basically, a more advanced chatbot is really the way to put it. Something that's able to take a prompt and generate some form of text in a very reasonable and quick manner.
You know, something interesting on that topic. Dr. Abby and I were recently in Spain for a conference, and it was an international conference on security. And there was two federal officers from Japan there, and they were talking about how, like, if you went back 3 or 4 years, phishing was almost non-existent in Japan. You never saw it. And then in November of what was it, 2021, when ChatGPT came out, they started seeing a massive increase. And they started to wonder, like, what happened? Why? Why is this? And they started to analyze the source of the emails, and they found that they were coming from Russia. So what they figured is that the Russians didn't speak very good Japanese before, and the tools that were there didn't work. But now with the LLMs, like you mentioned, they were able to do perfect translation, and there was a multi-100% increase in phishing there. On the story you told about the Hong Kong attack, just so everyone's aware, what was the loss of those two attacks that we saw just happen recently?
Yeah, we saw for the first one a 25 million US dollar loss. On the call there was an employee of the company, and they had 5 other deepfake employees at the organization join and convince them to wire that money. And another attack there in Hong Kong more recently was 500K US dollars.
So let's talk about that technology a little bit because it just sounds so sci-fi, right? I mean, you know, I know it's real. I've seen it. I've seen you guys do it. But you're talking on a Zoom call. There's 5 people that look exactly like employees that employee would know exist at that company. How does that happen? How do they do that?
Well, there's actually many different ways, which is pretty interesting. And again, as I've mentioned, there's only new ways coming out nowadays as AI continues to improve. But there's a few different ways. For one, there's face masks. So essentially, there is an AI model that can run and track a person on a camera and replace their face with a fake skin, essentially, that follows their eye movements, their mouth movements, the way they move their face, and even when they turn their face for some of the more advanced models. So those are some of the more state of the art and for live time conversational AI. Now, there's additionally the ability to generate a lip sync video of somebody, a high quality video where someone's lips are moving and saying something that they may not be. And what these can be used for is as a Zoom background, not for the conversation, but to look like somebody is actually in the call that maybe isn't and doesn't have anything to say. And then separately, you have audio and voice cloning models that are able to take in usually around 30 seconds to 1 minute of a person's voice and pretty accurately clone their voice. And so someone could get on a call without a camera on, and within 1 to 2 seconds can um, produce audio sounding like that person utilizing that clone. So we see it happening in many different ways, and it really depends on the type of attack or how many people are on the call. But again, we see a lot of advanced methods out there today that honestly have been used in combination a lot of times as well.
So the AI models that you're talking about, they can literally track a person's, like 5 people's face all at once on one call.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. I think
Yeah.
one other thing to mention there is what we're seeing going forward, and it's being used for good right now. Paul and I have another friend that we knew at UVA that is working at a company that will be creating fully conversational AI bots that are based on how you look, how you sound, you train it, based on photos of you, audio of you, and it can jump on a call. It's supposed to be built, more for an SDR type, application. But we know that these technologies are going to be abused, unfortunately. And going forward, there does need to be some sort of layer of protection. Even think about the ability of someone to put their fully conversational bot into a work environment and then, go to the beach the whole day, have your bot basically do the work for you.
So that's kind of what I was thinking and worried about, that with those kind of things coming out, we're going to see a lot more time theft from a workplace environment. So that doesn't sound like a very great, a very great creation. As an employer, I'm like, hey, I don't really like that,
Yeah.
We have our first question in the chat, so I think this is a good one. It says, would the Identify platform help with the type of attack carried out against KnowBe4 this year? So first, before you answer that, let's talk about that attack. It's relatively new. We just started hearing about it the other day. So can you guys define what happened there? Or are you aware of that one? I should just ask first instead of throwing you under the bus. I
Yeah.
figured you are.
Yeah, definitely. We actually, the day that a lot of the articles broke, we got a lot of content sent over to us. And yeah, no, that incident was bound to happen. We've heard companies really struggling with this over the last couple of months and last year, but we haven't really heard of much success there. Essentially, what happened is KnowBe4, which is a large cybersecurity training vendor, came out and released that they had gone through the hiring process and had accidentally hired someone from North Korea who is inside of their system and inside of their infrastructure now. And obviously they handled it, and they actually, I think they did a fantastic job with how they disclosed it and coming out about it. But a lot of it involved tricking people, tricking KnowBe4 that this was a different person, and utilized some deepfake technology. Now, to answer your question, actually, I was just writing something up in the chat, but we are, yes, 100%. We're actually pushing out a short demo or an applicable demo showcasing this specific use case in the next few days. But the way it would work is actually kind of twofold. For one, within these live video conferencing scenarios, we can utilize facial and audio profiles within our platform to determine if that person on the other line is who they actually say they are and if they're real or fake. But separately, in the Identify platform, we're working on plugging into talent management systems to essentially apply those verifications directly to your talent management system, allowing you to track new hires and ensure that those verifications exist, especially when you have a interview cycle with 4 different video conferencing interviews. It's definitely something that should be a need now and not just a luxury.
So, but I'm worried about some of the things you said, not just now, but before. Like you're talking about being able to verify someone's identity, but if there's a AI out there that can literally track my face when I move, someone could be holding up a driver's license that is mine because they cloned it and look just like me. How do we verify that it is not me holding up my driver's license on a camera?
Yeah, definitely. So it's pretty twofold. For one, our our face detection or our visual detection doesn't just operate by saying, does this person match the ID? It also is looking for, is this a real picture of Chris or a real video feed of Chris Hadnagay, and or is it a face mask, for example? So we are looking for kind of both aspects. We really wanted to hit on both the identity approach and the deepfake approach and make sure that both of those two things were solved for. Now, I also will say I think that what happened with KnowBe4 also involves more than just what we've built. It also involves a little bit of, you know, the background check process, and those kind of two things have to go hand in hand in order for everything to operate smoothly. And I think there may have been a few shortcomings there as well. So again, I think there are other pieces to it, but I think that this solution is something that 100% would have been a huge lift or help in this scenario.
That's I don't know, man. It seems like every time we take a step forward, you know, threat actors are already 2 steps ahead of us, and we're just trying to catch up, right? To make sure that we can utilize the tools for the better. But it sounds like you guys have been able to at least, not to put a pun using your name, but identify how we can look at a video and see that it's a mask, a digital mask or not. Is that true?
In terms of, are there things that you could detect when you just take a
Yeah.
look at one? So I would say you know, they're getting better. They're getting pretty insane, to be honest with you. Frankly, like even as I've gone about using one of these tools that I've used every week, I see it improve significantly. So the things that I would say that are the major differences that you'll still see today is if someone turns their face around here, it'll still look good, but once they turn all the way to a 90-degree angle, you'll see a significant difference. So if there's ever any worry without a tool to look at that, that would be something definitely to utilize. I also think a lot of times that the eye color is something that gets really messed up, which is very small. And especially when you don't talk to someone often, it's tough to discern. But eye color is something that is very tough to match. And then the last thing I'll say is facial hair, actually. When you're doing the mask, you actually have to, you're applying that mask on another person. And in order to do that, it can cause applying facial hair onto that person can be a difficult thing depending on the image you used or the image or video that the adversary used. So those are the main things I would say, but again, they're getting so good. I guess the last thing would be with face masks, the hardest thing for adversaries to do is match audio, a cloned audio, to the lips, because what they'll have to do is it's almost like an actor lip syncing to an audio that's playing over the Zoom call or video conferencing call. And so I would say that looking for a mismatch there is always not a foolproof method, but a good method for trying to analyze or trying to determine if that is real or is fake.
Yeah, excellent. So when we're talking about like these, you know, this large attack in Hong Kong, but let's talk about some others that we've seen come up to make people aware, because that one feels very targeted. They obviously were very targeted. They targeted that company with large sums of money in mind. But what are some other AI-based attacks that maybe everybody here needs to be worried about?
Yeah, I mean, I think something to be definitely aware of going forward is a lot of the more recent spam calls that people have been receiving are attempts to basically capture your voice. Given what Paul said, you know, all it takes is around 10 to 20 seconds of audio, you kind of bumbling on the phone saying, hello, hello. You know, basically someone can utilize that in a very personal attack. We've seen a lot of incidents of targeting elderly individuals, pretending to be grandchildren, someone's in trouble, utilizing that individual's voice, given there's a lot of content online of that person, whether it's their grandson, their son, someone they're related to in any sort of way. So staying vigilant in those environments is something that we really, really strongly encourage. Double checking pretty much any request that is made of you, especially when it comes to family. I know it's hard not to react and try to act very quickly given the emotional kind of nature of these attacks, but we do you know, really, really want everyone to confirm that type of stuff before making drastic action. We've seen people lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. It happened actually to one of my sister's teammates, grandfather. He lost $60,000 thinking that his granddaughter was in trouble. And that's something we never want to happen. And that's, you know, why I'd mentioned before, we're really looking to roll out into other communication channels, because we do think that the only real way to tackle this problem sustainably is to take an identity approach. Like Paul mentioned, everyone's 2 steps ahead, or Chris, like you mentioned,
Hmm.
attackers are always 2 steps ahead, utilizing kind of this traditional deepfake detection where you're using a heavyweight machine learning model, unfortunately just won't cut it. And it's too hard to implement at scale. So I think broadly, those very personal attacks is something that everyone else should look out for with the misuse of AI as well.
And I want to talk about that particular attack, especially for anyone who's a
Yeah.
parent out here, because this is a big deal, right? Last year, here in America, at least, every phone network has been breached at least once. I think Verizon got popped like 8 times. AT&T, we all heard the massive breach. They say every customer in AT&T's data is out there now. T-Mobile got popped. So let's think about that. All of these phone numbers are floating around, right? And what we have found at Social Engineer and also at the Innocent Lives Foundation is threat actors will find the phone number, let's say of a teenage girl or boy. Now they have that phone number and they'll spoof it. So when you get a call on my phone and it comes up as my daughter's number, and in the background I hear somebody saying, "Daddy, help me, Daddy, help me," that sounds just like my daughter, and it's her number. Psychologically, what's happening to us? Our amygdala is completely hijacked. Like fear is taken over. We are not critically thinking, and that's what they're looking for. And they're not asking for millions of dollars, right? Because they know the average person doesn't have that. They're saying we're going to hurt her if you don't cash app us 5K, 10K. Most people can come up with that on the spot, right? They're going to ask for something that our critical thinking brain that is not working right now. We're going to go, I don't know if this is her or not, but I'm not going to take the risk. So, and they say if you hang up, if you disconnect this call, we're going to hurt her, right? So fear takes over with that. So I get asked all the time, what can we do? Like, what is a methodology that we can use as parents? And here's what I've been telling everybody. It's kind of like an MFA, multi-factor authentication. My daughter and I have a code word that no one else on earth knows, just her and I. It's a code word. So she knows that if she's ever in trouble, she has to give me that code word. If we use it once, we change it because now it's out and it's public, right? So we have a code word. If she's in trouble, bam, this happens. And I know that I have to go and help her and find her and that it's real. I know that attack's real. So if that call ever came to me, I'd be like, ask her for the code word. If they don't have it, that's my MFA to know that this call is fake. It's duped, right? And I did the same thing with my grandparents, telling them, look, here's our code word. Write it on a sticky note, put it by her phone. Say, Grandma, if I ever call you and tell you I was at a bachelor party in Mexico and I got arrested and I need bail money, what's the code word? And if I'm too drunk to tell you what the code word is, let me sober up in prison and I'll call you back. But if I don't have the code word, don't give money, right? And this kind of action can save a lot of people from some of these attacks. Something that simple. Um, I have a question that came in for you guys. Does the platform have the ability to detect VPN anonymizers, which mask the true source of a feed?
So today we do not. Today what we do is our primary focus is pulling the video and audio feeds and utilizing those directly. One of the direct integrations that we're working on right now is a few things. For one, we're starting to look for the use of virtual cameras and virtual backgrounds, which kind of can support the authenticity of whether it's the actual like real camera feed or if it's a separate one, like OBS or something along those lines. Separately, we are also Zoom offers within their platform for business accounts and as well as some of the other platforms IP reports, so you can see where those are actually coming from. And so we're looking at being able to pull those and then attach those to verifications as well. So a lot we're moving in the direction of, but as we, integrating with video conferencing platforms for this use case, even when we've talked to Zoom recently, is a very, very new thing. And so we're still trying to figure out the ins and outs of how all of that goes. But definitely a great suggestion and something that we will very likely work into the platform in the near future.
Yeah, some really good questions on that topic coming in. So please keep asking them in the chat and we can go on these different topics. So Justin, you mentioned a few that were really, really important that seem to all center around the phone, right? Like I think,
Yeah.
when was it? Just a couple months ago, there was a deep fake audio that was launched, I think was it New Hampshire with President Biden's voice? And they
Hmm.
were able to raise money for his campaign, right? By
Yeah.
using his voice and asking for people to donate to this certain address. And people did, right? Because it sounded like President Biden. Now, we're talking about how would you can't get an MFA code from the president, right? And we're all going to be able to ask. So how would we tell someone to verify something like that? That, it's not your family. It's not someone that you can have a code word with.
Yeah, I mean, I think again that the answer is just, I think someone had even mentioned it in the chat, trust but verify, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just the unfortunate reality that you need to double check pretty
Yeah.
much everything. It's even with, this goes beyond these targeted attacks. We're talking about content you see on the news, to, things you see on online on
Mm.
Twitter. Um, there's a lot of different there it's almost like you need to crowdsource information in order to verify this stuff. Talk to your neighbors, say, hey, did you get this call? Look online. Again, most of this stuff is very public. If there's not, news or any real announcement about this happening, most likely it is fake. But again, it's just continue to trust, to continue to confirm things. Any real way you can go straight to the source, is the most important and most, viable way to verify that you are in a real,
Yeah.
environment,
I,
or interacting with a real person. Paul, go ahead there though.
I was gonna say, I think one really interesting example I'll provide actually, because I think the most important piece of what I was gonna say is being able to, like, as the someone who's releasing media, like for example Joe Biden, or any celebrity or prominent individual, keeping a ledger or keeping some track or verification or validation of the content that you're putting out is insanely important, not just for people to verify if something is a deep fake, but to verify that something's real. There was
Mhm.
actually about a month ago, Caitlyn Jenner released a cryptocurrency on her Twitter, and it had a bunch of tweets about it. And it was interesting because it ended up actually being real, but everyone
Hmm.
on Twitter had no idea if it was real or fake, because there was no validation behind it.
Yeah.
And I think the first video that she released to validate it, there was a filter on her face, so her eyebrow was like being in a weird way. So everyone was like, this has to be a deep fake. And because she didn't have that provable way to show that validation, it took about a day or two until news organizations even reported on it, because they didn't know. And so I think it's an interesting, there's that one side of validating things are
Yeah.
real or fake or not. Yeah, validating or checking if they're fake, but there's also, how do you prove or validate that what you're putting out's real and you weren't hacked or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I was interviewed about that Joe Biden deepfake, and they asked me that question too about what. I said, well, if you really want to donate to the campaign, then don't do it over the phone.
Yeah.
Go to his campaign website, right? And now you have verification. Like, if he's calling you personally, that's kind of crazy, first of all. And second of all, if you're like, yeah, I really want to donate, then just go to the campaign website and donate that way, or any charity. Like, if you want to donate to Red Cross or Save the Animals or whatever it is, go to the official website and do it that way. Because doing it because you found a link on your SMS or because someone called you, that phrase that you put in there, K Barrow, about trust but verify. That's the way. If you get a link that says, hey, I really want to donate to this cause, I love this charity, then go find it on the web. Don't do it at the link that was sent to you. Even if you think the link is legitimate, just don't, because this is the way that they're getting to us. I mean, here at Social Engineer, one of the ways that we audit people and test companies is we'll go out and we'll literally buy a domain that is almost exactly or identical to our target's domain, right? So if let's say I'll just use identify, if they were our target, we might go and buy something like updates-identify.com. And then we'll send an email out to all of his employees and be like, hey, we got some updates for the company. We need you to go read. And just use, I mean, that's of course a lame fish, but I'm just using that as an example. But the URL is so close that people look at it and go, it must be real. It says identify.com. It's the same URL, right? So we have to not even trust when the URLs look real, when the links look real. And we can't trust the technology, because what we'll do is we'll set up the URL so it has SPF records. So DKIM records are there. So when your mail servers get it, they're not saying, oh, this is a spoof domain. It's a real domain. It's a real thing that actually identifies back to where it should go. So, and that's exactly what threat actors are doing. They're using real domains to get us, and our technology sometimes gives us a false sense of hope because it tells us, hey, this is okay. This domain's safe. It made it through my filter, right? It has no warnings, and it has no spammy language. So this sounds good. And then because your email server says thumbs up, you can trust it. So the trust but verify methodology for right now, at least until your platform is fully produced, the trust but verify methodology right now is basically the only thing that we can do to stay safe, because otherwise we're really I don't have a way. I mean, I don't have a way of trusting anything you see online anymore. And the last thing I'll say about that is TikTok should not be your source of news. It should really not be your source of news. I mean, I think Dr. Abby and I were talking about this on a podcast recently about how many people during COVID got all of their information about the vaccine and COVID and all of that on TikTok, which it's half of, probably 95, 98% of it was garbage. Just because the guy has a white lab coat doesn't make him a doctor, right? I own a white lab coat. I'm not a doctor, right? So it doesn't mean that. I own a UPS outfit too. I don't work for UPS. So I mean, it's like you can't say that just because you have the outfit that you could trust. So we want to know, you verify that through, and Twitter. Yes, Adam, 100% agree. Twitter, actually, any social media should not be your source of news, right? Any social media. It shouldn't be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. That should not be your news source. You see a story on there because you're flipping through tweets or whatever, you're wasting your time on TikTok, and you see that, you're like, I wonder if that's real. That's when you go and you start searching on actual real news sites and find out if it's a real news story. And what's interesting is I just saw this an article about this. There was a tweet about how rich Russians are renting these yachts that are fully armed, and then they're taking them into the
I just saw
Somalian,
this.
right? You saw this, right?
This
They're
is
taking
insane.
them into the Somalian Sea, trying to attract pirates so then they can kill them. And they can just off them with grenade launchers and stuff. And the video was so real. They're showing these very rich people entering these boats and the massive missile launchers on it. And Twitter came out and said, this video is of U.S. naval ships. That's not even yachts. This is a story that got released in like 1999, and it's not real. But people were retweeting it and like, I love the Russians, kill the pirates. They were like going nuts about this story. And someone just took a video from like U.S. naval forces and put it up there saying, this is what the Russians are doing. So, and it's like, and people went nuts, retweeting it, sending it everywhere. Like this was real news. It had nothing to do with deepfakes, but it was, in a sense, just taking other video and now applying it and then saying, this is what's happening in the world. And if we started spreading that, that would be a form of spreading the fake news. So we really gotta. Did you see any other tips on that, Justin, when you saw the story? Because that was just this morning, wasn't it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I saw it last night. Yeah, pretty insane. And you do see a lot of that actually happening. There were a lot of deep fakes related to the Israel-Palestine conflict. That's, previous, like, years dated footage. Same with the Ukraine and Russia conflict. There was a lot of content that was kind of reworked and used in an attempt to kind of go and show war crimes here, or attacks there, for propaganda purposes. But something I also, Paul, go ahead.
I was gonna say, oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to tie back to online and talking about social media and content and verifying that stuff. I think one of the main reasons Paul and I started building Identify in general is we saw the existing deepfake detection market as this unsustainable approach, utilizing some large machine learning model to tell you whether some video, some audio, is real or fake, and having that being pushed through a black box and giving you a yes or no answer is just something that we shouldn't really rely on, unfortunately. It's just will never be good enough, and frankly, we shouldn't be using truth algorithms. That's really what these traditional deepfake detection systems are. You're building a truth algorithm, and what Paul and I have always said is if you're using a solution like that, you should have another source, right? If you're a news organization and you're relying on some model to basically tell you whether something is true or false, you should probably get another source for that article. It's just the unfortunate reality that we need to do more than just kind of run it through a process. You need to have multiple sources, and that's why we took this identity-centric approach. We just think that that's the only real sustainable way to go forward.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, because I think that the truth algorithms, just even the name gives us a false sense of security, right? Well, it's a truth algorithm. It's
Yeah.
going to tell me if this is real or not. So again, putting our full faith and trust in technology is a great way to fail miserably, right?
Well,
But we
the way I like to think about it, and that Justin and I have talked about it, is when you're using, for example, I don't know how many of you guys have used Chat GPT, but when you're using Chat GPT, which is probably the widely most well-known large language model AI, you're going to use it, and most times it's going to be right, but I'm sure everyone's seen a time it's wrong about something. And that's the same way with these deepfake detectors. They're a model that can't tell you. It's just a black box. It's going to spit out an answer, and you kind of have to trust whether that's the right answer or not. And it's the same way with Chat GPT, except it's much easier to see that they're wrong in some scenarios there. And so really, yeah, it's with AI and these black box models, really the next step for those is figuring out how to provably show the path that a model is taking, which is not a capability today, or being able to in some way provide validation behind that answer.
Now, Paul, tell me if this is true or not, because this is what I heard, that a model like ChatGPT, it can't say words like "I don't know that," so it will actually do something called hallucinate, and it will make up an answer if it doesn't have the real answer. And what I found is when I'm conversing with ChatGPT and it gives me an answer, I'll say, "Is this a hallucination or not?" And I've caught it a couple of times. It will say, "Yes, that was a hallucination." I'm like, "Whoa, the thing just lied to me." And I had to ask it if it's lying to get the truth that it was lying. And they're
Yeah,
calling it hallucinations. Why are they calling it that? Why not just call it what it is, which is I made up an answer?
yeah, well, it's interesting because the way the way that a large language model works on a deeper level is it's not like a human brain. It's trying to find textual similarity and then utilize that to produce this output text. And so when it's doing that, it is finding something that it deems the most similar to your question. So it doesn't know that it's not necessarily the answer, but it can sometimes determine that by passing it back through, like you mentioned. So it's an interesting concept, and I think that some of the larger companies have done a pretty good job about starting to work it out of those. But again, because this is a black box, because you're not specifically setting exactly what the model looks like, you're allowing it to train itself in a way. You're going to run into those issues as the creator of those.
You know, it's something funny I did just to kind of test I don't know, test the technology is I will go to ChatGPT and say, only using twitter.com, here's my question. And I'll ask it a question about something in politics or government or news. Like only using facebook.com, same question. Only using linkedin.com, same question. And the amount of different answers for the same exact question you will get from ChatGPT by just limiting it to where it's allowed to use its source of info is fascinating to me. Like you can ask it, almost anything, like, when did the earth start? And we'll be ask it only using Twitter. And you'll get crazy answers from things, just really crazy things by limiting it. I do want to mention something that Dr. Abby put in the chat because I think it's an important point. She said, just because someone is a doctor doesn't automatically make them an expert if their doctorate is in a completely different field. I think that's a really valid point, right? I mean, Dr. Abby's a doctor, but not in COVID or anything like that. So like it would be another good point to just because someone is maybe legitimately a doctor, maybe that white lab coat is legitimately a doctor's coat, but they may not know everything about the topic that they're talking about. So verifying that person actually has the expertise to give you knowledge on that particular topic, I think is really important. Are there any other deep fake or AI-based attacks? I have one more that I want to mention for parents, but do you have any others that you think are important for everyone to know about, business-wise or personal?
I think one thing that is not necessarily an attack, and then I'll pass over to you, Justin, because I'm sure you'll have something there. I think something that's not an attack and is semi-related to deepfakes, but actually something that I found more recently, is that AI models and some AI tools have come out recently that make OSINT much, much more easy for both social engineering like phishing attacks or for use in a deepfake. For one, I've actually messed around with it. ChatGPT now has the ability where I can say, use all web sources and tell me everything you know about Paul Van as I want to send an email to him introducing myself. And it will go to my LinkedIn. It will go to all the pages on my LinkedIn and it will follow through those and put together essentially like a semi report on myself. Now, what's even more interesting is there's a new AI company, I believe it's called Whitebridge AI, which I've been messing around with, that they advertise that they will find every single thing about you online and put together an entire AI report for you. And you can do it on anybody. And so I did it, and it finds your interests and your hobbies. It puts together a report on what the do's and don'ts for emailing me. It puts together all the events and media I've been to. And so it is like, in terms of OSINT and open source intelligence and being able to find things about you to then use in an attack against you, there are a lot of capabilities now that AI has opened the doors for that make it so you don't need to be as experienced with this kind of stuff. And there's a lot more that people can learn about you from things that you have online, which I think is important for some of these attacks. But Justin, I'll pass over to you if there's anything else you wanted to hit on.
Yeah, there's one, and it's like a pretty sensitive one. I think Chris and I, and we've talked about this issue, but the one of the big problems on social media is CSAM, where people are utilizing real photos of individuals to create, child pornography as well as other pornography in general. And I always remember, when I grew up in the time where, the iPhones were kind of like the first phones, and my parents always telling me that whatever you put out online is permanent. And the unfortunate reality now is that everything that you have put out online is permanent, and then therefore can be used against you in any way, shape, or form to replicate what you look like, what you sound like, and then also, put you in compromising positions. We think this is a really big problem. The social media platforms, frankly, are not going to do a lot about it because they're protected by Section 230. The unfortunate reality is that a lot of the actual source images are grabbed from publicly available sources. If you look at the incidents like in Westfield, New Jersey, in LA, all that happened was, a couple boys, being dumb, grabbed some photo off, a girl's Instagram that's public facing. And we see the same sort of real threat in the enterprise space as well, because your LinkedIn is public, right? If you have your photo up there, you can do the same thing. But at the same time, the CSAM problem is significant. Paul and I have also created kind of this second product that we think could actually address a lot of those concerns. We're calling it JAM. It's in the preliminary stages, but what it actually does is it confuses the underlying classifiers of machine learning models. So therefore, if you were to grab an image of someone with our embedded solution in it, it wouldn't be able to recognize the image in a very efficient way, and therefore produce this unrealistic output. So right now, these images that are being put out of underage individuals, or even I've seen influencers and celebrities, it happens to all the time. The point is that we can't stop it. What we can do, though, is actually kind of reduce the ability to create it, so that individuals online are not looking at it and be like, oh my God, look at how real that is. It's something's definitely wrong there, and that is definitely fake. So I wanted to hit on that. It's something we, think is the really unfortunate problem is that it's really going to get worse given how easy it is to access this stuff. So, Chris, I'm sure you have thoughts there.
So that's actually, you and I were thinking of the same one, but I'm going to go a little further on that for anyone who has children that you want to be aware of this. So right now, there's a very large group out of the Ivory Coast that's targeting young men here in the country, usually young teenage boys. And what they'll do is they'll start chatting. They think they're chatting with a girl. They use deepfake technology to create nudes of the female, and an encouragement for the boy to exchange nudes back. They eventually get him to come on camera and to perform a sexual act. And then once they have that video, they tell the young man that they're going to release it publicly and humiliate him unless he starts to steal money from his parents, take credit cards, small sums, starts off $20, $50 a week, something like that. Throughout the country, according to a report I just read from the FBI, there's been 26 suicides because of this. Because young men don't often go for help. They don't ask for help. They're embarrassed. So they've been targeting young men. And what we have found in some of the chats from ILF that we've been involved in with this is they actually encourage them to kill themselves. They say there's only two ways out of this. You can keep paying or you can kill yourself. They actually encourage it. So this is a serious problem. If we have young men and women in our lives, we need to have, and the reason young men don't go for help is they feel like they're not going to get the help or they're too humiliated. So we need to sit down with our sons and our daughters and tell them, hey, if this happens, like I'm going to be your advocate. I'm not going to be mad at you. Like I want to protect you. So if this ever happens, like you need to come to me, right? We'll work it out. We'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll do something, right? So that we really need to be talking to our kids about this problem because it is a big thing. And just for those of you that don't know, the acronym that Justin used, CSAM, that stands for Child Sex Abuse Material. And that material is a growing pandemic. And with AI, and I'm sure Detective Roberts, you can attest to this, we have seen millions of images, AI generated images of child sex abuse material because they're using real images and producing this content. And now they're getting into producing AI porn videos, pornographic videos. So it is only going to get worse. And I think something that the detective said is something that we need to realize. He said in the chat, nothing is ever fully gone, even when you delete it. And that's a true story, right? I mean, look at this. There's a website called archive.org that scrapes the internet every few seconds and just archives it. So you can go to like archive.org and look up social-engineer.com and see the changes over the years of our website. Don't do it because it was pretty horrific back in the day. But I'm just saying, you can go and you can see how bad we were, like, in 2010 and 2011. And it takes moment by moment shots. So it's not just once a year. It does it sometimes throughout the month. So you can go to a website. Maybe you had a website up there and you put some pictures that's being archived. So you might go to that account now. You're grown up. You're like, wow, I was stupid when I was a kid. And you delete them. They're not deleted. They're there. And what we found too through some breaches is companies like Facebook, they store those images. And if you have your metadata turned on, your photos have your GPS location in them. And even though that's not on the public facing website, Facebook saves all of that because that's how they give you marketing experience. When they know your geolocation, they can now give you marketing ads that are located to where you are at. So when those databases get breached, all that data is in there. And those photos that you thought you deleted, they're still there. So I don't really want to end on the complete fear note because we're going to go to Q&A shortly. But hang on, we got a bunch of questions coming in now. Have you seen security awareness training companies integrating AI deepfake campaigns into their products and offerings? So yes, matter of fact, Rich, that is something that we started doing with Identify. We partnered with them, I think it was maybe 6 months or so ago, and we're offering deepfake social engineering attacks to organizations to help train them, right? So we actually will, we could talk a little bit about it. We perform deepfake audio calls and we perform deepfake videos and then the digital skins that Paul talked about extensively and trying to get people aware that these attacks exist and to show them that this is real and this can happen at your company. I'm not sure if there, Paul or Justin, I'm not sure if there are other companies offering this yet.
I think that we've seen a few like startups that are just kicking off trying to do something like this. I don't think anyone's gotten really anywhere with it yet. I think it's a very, very new field as it currently stands.
Let me read this from Courtney. As people who are public figures, meaning you want some of your information like name, email address, company name available for potential investors, but also a clear line of protection of your PII, how do you determine how much information is too much without limiting your ability to connect with others to grow your company? It's a great question.
That is a great question. Honestly, from my perspective, it's a balance. It depends on what you're comfortable with. I would say anything you think that can be significantly used against you. I don't think that, your email address and, maybe even your phone number, if you want to be contacted ASAP. It's almost like a personal preference thing. It's what you're comfortable with. If you think that something can be basically used against you in a malicious way, I would err on the side of caution. But at this point, I hate to say it, there's also kind of a lack of tools to actually protect against this stuff, which is why Paul and I are building what we're building. No one ever really thought that the posting photos on social media or videos on social media, audio on social media, would ever actually be able to be used to literally remake you in a digital environment. It's still sort of like hard to wrap your head around. Because again, I don't want to tell you, don't post photos on the internet, don't, put material out for PR purposes. It's sort of like we're in this time of distress where there's honestly nothing you can significantly do, because someone will be able to grab your LinkedIn photo or something or other things along those lines. So if you aren't comfortable with that, what I would say is, apply proactive tools that, limit the amount of information that people are able to get from you without being directly connected. So I know LinkedIn has features where you can actually see their full name before connecting with them, their profile picture, hardening other, security, social media, platform security, like making your account private, only accepting follows from people across the board. There are a lot of privacy tools. But again, it's almost like we're in this time where technology is kind of rapidly advanced without the ability to, protect against people misusing it.
And Courtney, what I always tell people too is when you put something out there, you have to change the way you think about that information, right? Just because, like, I put my daughter and my son's name in one of my books, right? Now, I have to assume everyone on earth can know my children's names. So if you come up to me in a conference or on the street and say, "Hey, how's Amaya?" That doesn't mean we're friends. I have to keep that in mind. Just because you know her name doesn't mean we're actually buddies, right? I use her name on the podcast. I've said it a billion times. So everyone knows who my daughter is, right? So now that information is out there, I have to change the way that I think about it. So if you put information out there to help, like I write blogs on LinkedIn, I wrote for Psychology Today, I have 200 and something podcasts out there. Like, I mean, deep faking me is not going to be too hard. So I have to just think about that and go, okay, this information is out there. I want it to be out there because I want to get businesses to hire me. So now I just have to realize that because it's out there and you now know something about me doesn't mean that I can trust you. So we go back to that statement. I have to trust but verify, right? Because that information. Now, that goes with information from a business sense. I always tell people to really critically think about what images and videos you put out about yourself there. The younger generation with these TikTok dances and stuff may not be realizing that stuff can be taken and used in very malicious ways to humiliate people. So I always tell the younger generation, just really think about, do I really want that out there when I'm 25, 30, 40, I'm looking for a job, I'm starting a family? Do I really want that stuff on the internet? Because it's going to be there, right?
It's a balance. It's really about, like, Paul and I, running this company, starting it, it's either you pump out a lot of social media content and you literally throw it out every single day and just kind of wait till things hit. You see a lot more of that building in public style. And I just don't think there is that realization yet that this next wave of phishing, this next wave of social engineering utilizes all of that. And we're basically just feeding the machine. And then again, social media platforms are not going to be very proactive about this stuff. It is not in their best interest to almost determine what is good or what is bad to be posted on the platform. And if they start kind of taking things off, taking things down, a lot of stuff gets called into question, and they don't want to be liable. That's the bottom line. Yeah. They don't want to get sued. And that's the unfortunate reality. So it's, this looming threat. I think everyone should really be aware, like Chris said, be very pick and choose what you want to put out there. I think that's the kind of the ending thought.
There was a sexual assault of a 15-year-old girl that was live streamed on Facebook, and they left it up there for 5 days because they couldn't figure out if they wanted to take the risk of ruining that account's First Amendment rights. Yeah. So just what Justin said, they're afraid of being sued. So they left a sexual assault video up there, right? This was one of those things that was brought up in the Congress hearing when they were nailing, what's his name, Zuckerberg, because of the content that doesn't get scraped quickly off of there, right? Horrific content that doesn't get scraped because they're more worried about someone's freedom to say what they want to say than the actual horrific crimes that are being live streamed. Right. So it's kind of ridiculous. I do want to mention this conversation happening. Artem brought up a good point. I kind of made it sound that archive.org, it's there forever. You can remove things from archive.org. That's, but if you go and you find Like I can go there and say, hey, get rid of everything on my website from 2010 to 2015, and they have to do it. I can make a request. I can do that, right? So you can. And then the discussion, and it's not going to stop the bad guys. That's true. But here's something that we always say to our clients here at SECom is make yourself not the low-hanging fruit, right? Make yourself, it's true. Like if somebody really wants to attack me, they're gonna find a way, right? If they're determined against Chris Hadnagy, it's gonna happen. But if they're just looking for a target, they're going easy, they're going for the easy fruit first, right? So that apple that they don't have to stretch for, that's the one they're gonna pick. But if you're all the way up there in the middle of the tree, and it's really hard to get to you, they're gonna go through all the other apples before they go to you. So if you can make it harder for them, then that leaves you a better chance. You know, ever seen that meme that's like two guys running away from a bear? You don't have to be the fastest runner. You just got to be faster than that guy, right? And then you don't get eaten. That's all you got. And I know it sounds terrible to say I'm going to push someone else under the bus, but we're not doing that. Just protect yourself, right? And then you don't have to worry so much. But Justin said it perfectly. I mean, the bad guys if they're determined, it's just going to get worse as before we see it get better. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. If you have any other questions, please put them in the chat before we finish up. And what I want to do, Justin and Paul, if you can, in the chat, put your contact details. I know people are going to want to see, because I know everyone knows how to get a hold of us. They signed up on our website, but you should put your website there, your emails, your social media accounts, pictures of yourself, your social security number, credit cards, all of that in the chat, you know. And I do have a question I'm going to actually ask you to unmute, Detective. Are you seeing things in law enforcement? I was joking, Adam. Yes. Do you see things in law enforcement when it comes to these type of attacks using deepfakes or deepfake technology with sex crimes against children or things like that?
So our agency is actually a part of the ICAC task force, which is Internet Crimes Against Children. So we get tips in pretty frequently, but we're trying to get ahead of the curve because to my knowledge, we haven't received any deepfake tips from our agency or any AI generated, but we're trying to get ahead of the curve, us in the office here, and try to learn as much about this as possible. How to tell when it's AI or deepfake. It's something that we know is going to be an issue eventually. And I know there's multiple agencies around here that have probably dealt with it. Some of your more popular cities around us, like Orlando, stuff like that. I'm sure they have cases where they have dealt with it. We have not seen any, to my knowledge, yet. So that's like I kind of joined the webinar today was to try to kind of get my gears turning and try to think of how to combat this stuff when we do get it.
Well, I applaud you for that, because it's something that we are working with law enforcement heavily on, trying to get that education out there, because we are going to see more of it. Sadly, we're going to see more of it. And right now, for the nonprofit that I'm a part of, the Innocent Lives Foundation, sadly, I don't want to get too graphic, but we're seeing it younger and younger too. Don't think teenagers. We're talking like toddlers, right? So it's disturbing stuff that's going to be happening that we need to get a handle on. So thank you for making that effort to get ahead of the curve. That can only help. Really appreciate that. So we have Paul and Justin's contact details in there. If there's any other questions, we got another minute or two left. If not, I just want to say thank you for all of you showing up. Great conversation in the chat. We're going to start doing more of these type of discussions, because we're seeing people coming to our social medias and asking these type of questions. They're really helpful and good. So we're going to start doing webinars every other month on different topics to try to bring awareness to some of these topics, and tying in things that can help not just businesses, but that can help families, parents, individuals, because I think these things are awareness is the very first step in combating any of these things. If we're not aware of it, right? Like if this is the first time you heard some of these things, you're like, whoa, like your mind gets blown a little bit. Like, I can't believe it. Like that actually happens. And now you're aware of it. So now that's the first step, and at least starting to think about, okay, here's how we defend against those things. There's some links in the chat for everyone, and I want to thank you all for coming today. Again, we got another minute or two if you have a question. If not, you're free to go. And I want to thank you all for being here. Except for those people that were screaming and yelling in the chat. I don't thank you. You're welcome, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And Chris, thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was great. I mean, I knew when we had this topic, I had to get you guys in here because it's gonna be like, well, we need to have the AI experts, here on that. I think now that I'm gonna just stop recording real quick and then we